At exactly 7:32 p.m., a black woman stepped into the main lobby of the Valamont Crown Hotel. She wore a simple black-fitted t-shirt and a pair of well-cut blue jeans. No designer bag, no jewelry, no entourage. Just a calm, measured stride and a steady gaze, as if she had already lived through scenes like this 100 times. Her name was Selena Ward, and none of the reception staff lined up behind the counter knew they were about to become the central characters in an incident that would shake the entire luxury hotel industry. The manager on duty was Brandon Ellis, 45, hair slicked back with gel, arms crossed like he was running a military operation. At his side were his two assistants, Cheryl Miles, 29, with crimson lipstick and a scrutinizing stare, and Raheem Patel, 25, tall, with a look that carried judgment before a word was even spoken. As Selena approached the counter, not a single greeting was offered. No smile, no welcoming glance. Only silent assessment, reeking of discrimination. "I have a reservation," Selena said calmly. "My name is Ward, Presidential Suite." Brandon raised an eyebrow and slowly repeated, "Presidential Suite?" He typed at the computer as if searching for proof of a mistake, then looked Selena up and down with unapologetic doubt. "Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" The question was tossed lightly, but it landed with the weight of decades of bias. Selena didn't answer. She simply pulled out a black credit card and her ID, placing them gently on the counter. Brandon picked up the card like it might leave a stain. "That's strange," he muttered. "This doesn't add up." Cheryl immediately pressed a button beneath the desk. "Security, we have a suspected fraud attempt trying to access the executive level," she announced through the intercom. Raheem smirked. "Scammers are smart now. Black cards, fake names, phantom bookings. Let's hope we're thorough." Across the lobby, a tourist sitting with her boyfriend quietly lifted her phone to record. "I'm filming," she said. "This is going online. People need to see this." Brandon kept spinning the card between his fingers like he was waiting for it to confess its guilt. "Listen," he said louder. "We've seen this trick before. Flash a VIP title, throw a card around, and disappear before the bank confirms anything. But not this time." He turned to Raheem. "Lock the card." Raheem gladly walked to a small safe behind the counter, unlocked it, and placed the card inside like he was sealing away evidence. "Done," he said with a sneer. "You're finished here." Selena didn't flinch. Her voice was calm but cold. "You're going to regret that." Brandon smirked, utterly convinced he was upholding the standards of service. What he didn't know was that in just a few moments, every protocol and every shred of power he clung to was about to be turned upside down. The woman he had just humiliated wasn't just a VIP guest. She was the one who had signed off on the entire system. And this time, she hadn't come to sleep. She had come to wake up an empire that had fallen asleep in its own arrogance. In the grand hall of the Valamont Crown, where crystal lights cascaded down onto polished marble floors, a quiet ripple began to spread. Everything seemed to be under Brandon's control, but it was Selena Ward's strange, unwavering calm that made the situation feel increasingly off. She didn't resist, didn't argue, didn't back down, only held a gaze that seemed to pierce through the paper-thin manners masking the so-called professionalism of luxury service. Across the lobby, a young traveler named Cassidy Nguyen, a well-known travel blogger just arrived from Vancouver, had already begun live streaming. She wasn't shouting, just whispering to her followers, "Everyone, I think I'm witnessing blatant discrimination at the Valamont Crown Hotel. I'm recording everything." Her boyfriend, Julian, silently panned the camera, capturing the exact moment Raheem locked Selena's credit card into the safe with a smug expression. "Listen," Julian added on the stream, "if you're thinking maybe it's a misunderstanding, then just look at her face. That's not the face of someone committing fraud. That's someone who's been through this her entire life." On the screen, the view count started climbing rapidly. On the right side of the lobby, Elena Rivas, a young front desk employee recently transferred from the Phoenix branch, suddenly felt a lump in her throat. She had read the name Selena Ward on the VIP list earlier that morning, marked with Owner Access Priority Clearance. But since entering the hotel, Selena hadn't once flaunted who she was. Elena looked at her and sensed something quiet, but powerful, a kind of authority that didn't need to raise its voice. She stepped forward, meaning to speak up, but Brandon threw her a glance cold and silencing like a warning shot. "She's not on the list," he said loudly, even though he knew it was a lie. Selena calmly pulled out her phone, not to argue, but simply to make one internal call. In the executive office 3 buildings away, her assistant, Yvette Monroe, picked up instantly. "It's time," Selena said flatly. "Is the system ready?" No explanation was needed. Yvette replied, "All cameras are recording, every action is being logged, and the notice to Carla has been sent." Brandon still held the card in his hand, now visibly uneasy. He raised his voice, trying to draw attention away from the truth. "We've dealt with imposters like you before. Don't expect to fool anyone here." Meanwhile, across the lobby, eyes began to shift. Guests slowly drifted from the bar, the lounge, the waiting area. They might not fully grasp what was unfolding, but they knew one thing for sure: something was wrong. A silver-haired man in a modest suit whispered to his wife, "She's not just any guest, I can tell." Then Cassidy, still live streaming, suddenly spoke up for everyone to hear. "We are watching a public mistake, and I bet it's about to be flipped on its head." In that instant, the atmosphere in the lobby changed from detached to disturbed, and Selena remained perfectly still at the center, in the eye of a storm that was quickly gaining strength. Every pair of eyes began to focus on her, not because she was pleading for justice, but because she was silent, waiting for it to arrive. None of the 3 staff members behind the front desk realized that the time they had left to maintain control of the situation was slipping away by the second. Brandon still believed his voice was the law within these gilded walls. Raheem stood tall with a hand on the safe, as if staking his claim to authority. And Alana, the woman who always stood just behind Brandon, began to feel the tension creeping through the cool layer of makeup she used to mask her doubts. But Selena Ward didn't need to raise her voice. She simply tilted her head toward the phone and spoke in a calm, steady tone. "Yvette, mark this moment. Log every word, every action, every glance. I want a full data record from the surveillance cameras starting the minute I walked through the door." On the other end, Yvette replied without pause, "Everything is logged. Valamont's internal system is already recording. Carla is en route." Just one name, Carla Drayton, was enough to make Elena's eyes flicker from behind the desk. No one who worked for the Valamont chain didn't know Carla, the senior vice president of human resources for the entire group. But Brandon still hadn't grasped the storm headed his way. He stepped closer to the counter, his voice louder now. "I don't know who you are, but this attitude is unacceptable. We're keeping the card for investigation. If you escalate this, we'll have to call the police." Selena didn't flinch. Her eyes calmly scanned the guests watching nearby, and her gaze alone made more than a few people instinctively step back. In the silence, she looked toward Kevin, a middle-aged guest who had been recording since the beginning. "Have you filmed enough?" she asked, her voice even and unwavering. Kevin nodded, but slowly lowered his phone, as though guided by something deeper than curiosity, perhaps respect. "I don't know who you are," he said, "but I know you're not a fraud. You stand like someone who has weathered many storms." Elena pulled out a printed VIP guest list from beneath the counter and began scanning each line in silence. Her eyes stopped on the name, Selena Ward, Executive Access Override System Owner. Her chest tightened. She swallowed hard and looked up, ready to speak, but Brandon had already noticed her reaction. "If you say one more word," he growled at Elena, "I'll throw you out with her." That sentence, for some reason, froze the entire lobby in a single breath. And then, for the first time since it all began, Selena took a step forward. The entire room seemed to lean back. "I allowed you the freedom to reveal yourselves," she said slowly. "I gave you space to speak what has long been hidden behind your polite smiles, and you've said enough." Brandon burst into laughter, convinced he still held the upper hand. "You think you're someone? A black card and a sob story don't make you anybody." But he didn't notice the guests behind him, quietly stepping forward, forming a half circle around the confrontation. Elena didn't back down either. She slid the paper across the counter, revealing Selena's name and the words "System Owner," and stared Brandon directly in the eyes. "You're insulting the founder of this place." The words weren't loud, but they echoed like thunder in a space that had grown far too comfortable with deceit wrapped in courtesy. The atmosphere in the Horizon Valamont lobby was no longer the usual polished indifference found in luxury hotels. It had shifted into a quiet form of confrontation, where every glance carried suspicion and every action, no matter how small, was remembered. When Elena confirmed Selena Ward's identity with a single sentence, "You're insulting the very founder of this place," no one instantly believed it, but no one dared to laugh either. Brandon took half a step back, not yet from fear, but from shock. Raheem still had his hand on the safe's steel door, but his facial muscles had begun to twitch. Alana stood frozen, her eyes darting across the guests now watching closely. A few began pulling out their phones, not to film, but to call, to message, to share what they were witnessing. The hallway, once echoing with the sound of polished footsteps, now fell into a strange kind of silence, the kind that only exists in places on the brink of change. Brandon tried to reclaim control with the same voice he used to intimidate his staff. "Let's not get carried away by emotion. This is clearly a misunderstanding. Her information could have been faked. And if she really is the owner, why didn't she say so from the beginning?" That question, intended as a blow, only exposed the truth they had tried so hard to hide. That respect in this system had never been based on truth, but on appearance. Selena didn't respond. Instead, an elderly guest rolled his suitcase closer, looked at Brandon, then turned to Selena. "If what this young lady Elena said is true, then you are the owner of this hotel. And whether it's true or not, the way you've been treated, we all saw it." Another voice rang out from the coffee counter. "I was interrogated at check-in too, just because they thought I booked the wrong room tier." The speaker, an Asian woman, still held a cappuccino she hadn't touched. Then another voice from near the entrance added, "Last time, I called to complain about being denied a room I had already booked. The staff told me it was due to an internal policy, and it was this same woman, Alana, who said it." Each statement was like a hammer hitting the fragile wall Brandon had built around himself, a wall that had only held up as long as silence protected it. Now, with the curtain falling, he was just a middle-aged man with a wrinkled tie and a face full of panic. And then something no one expected happened. A young couple stepped forward and stood between Selena and the front desk. "If you need to stay, we'll give up our room," the man said firmly. "But you're not leaving here like some unwanted guest." Alana looked around in panic. Raheem, sensing the crowd had completely shifted its weight, quietly stepped away from the safe, but Selena remained motionless. "I don't need anyone to give up their room," she said, her voice cold but not bitter. "I just need the truth to be where it belongs." Right then, the internal phone rang. Elena answered, still uncertain, but her expression changed entirely after listening. She turned to Brandon. "Carla Drayton is on her way, and she told me to inform you to cease all activity immediately." Brandon went pale. He knew who Carla was, and he knew, now that her name had been spoken, whatever game of power he thought he was playing was over. The name Carla Drayton sliced through the final threads of Brandon's grasp on the situation like a blade. In his eyes, what once was authority had shriveled into pure confusion. Carla was not just another employee, she was the regional executive director, the final word on any internal matter concerning Horizon Valamont and its parent chain. And if Carla had chosen to come in person rather than join a remote meeting, then a storm was truly brewing. Selena still stood motionless, neither raising an eyebrow nor revealing any sign of triumph. Her gaze no longer focused on Brandon. It shifted to those around her, the guests, the ones who hesitated, the ones who stayed silent. She was not waiting for an apology. She was waiting to see who among them would rise from their seats, not to defend her, but to defend their own conscience. While waiting, Elena quietly accessed the internal system and logged in using temporary administrative credentials granted to her by Selena 3 months earlier during a closed-door corporate retreat. A few clicks and commands later, Hidden records began to appear, all labeled resolved. But they shared a format: multiple customer complaints, mostly from women, people of color, or those not dressed in designer attire, each echoing the same experience: suspicion, denied service, delayed check-in without reason. The common thread? Every complaint was tied to the shifts led by Brandon, Alana, or Raheem, and each case was marked with the same resolution: guest mistook location not suitable for brand tier. Elena turned to Selena and spoke softly. I found them, all marked as low priority, and never escalated to corporate oversight. Selena nodded slightly, as if she had already known. But this time, instead of simply preserving these findings for later review, she made a decision. Extract everything and send it directly to legal. Request an immediate incident log. Then she turned to one of the lobby's security cameras, her voice calm yet resolute. We are not waiting another day. Right at that moment, the lobby doors swung open. Carla Drayton entered, needing no introduction. She did not question anyone, nor did she ask for explanations. With only a look from Selena and a brief report from Elena, she pulled out her private phone and pressed a programmed button. Human Resources, I need the full employment files of Brandon Myers, Alana Cross, and Raheem Vaziri from the past 3 years. Also initiate an independent audit of Horizon Valamont. Effective immediately. None of the three had time to react. What they once considered strengths connections, maneuvering, seniority disintegrated with a single directive. Carla then turned to Selena and said without embellishment, the board's resolution is ready. If you wish to proceed now, we will provide full support. Selena did not hesitate. She drew her phone and tapped a single number. On the other end, her legal advisor's voice rang out, firm and clear. Prepared for direct action, awaiting your confirmation. Selena answered without pause, confirmed. And in that brief moment, the old power structure collapsed. Brandon, Alana, and Raheem were no longer employees. They were outsiders. And everyone saw it happen. There was no applause, no cheers, but none were needed. The silence that followed was the highest form of acknowledgement, a tribute to the woman who had just exposed an entire system in the very lobby that once sought to diminish her. Brandon stood frozen, while Alana backed into a corner, still clutching her now silent earpiece. Raheem glanced around as if searching for an exit, but there was nowhere left to welcome him. The access cards of all three, once symbols of authority, were now just strips of plastic stripped of power. And though they were asked to leave the front desk, Selena made one thing clear. Let them walk through the main lobby, she said. Everyone needs to witness what happens when power is abused. The guests, who had initially stood by out of curiosity, now began to step forward. A middle-aged woman with graying hair placed a hand on Selena's shoulder. I sent a letter of feedback last year. No one ever replied. But today, thank you. A deaf man previously ignored by Brandon raised both hands in a gesture of gratitude. The words of appreciation weren't loud, but they kept coming. The crowd didn't disperse. They remained not out of spectacle, but because they had witnessed a rare inversion of power. A woman once dismissed, now rebuilding from the roots, right where it all began. Selena stepped in front of the reception desk. Her voice rang out not harsh, but firm. From this day forward, Horizon Valamont will no longer define its guests by their wallets, nationalities, or wardrobe. We will redefine hospitality by dignity. She turned to Elena, needing no paperwork, no ceremony. Elena Ruiz, from now on, you are the interim manager, with full authority over all front-facing operations in this hotel. Elena froze for just a second, then stood tall and accepted the responsibility with a steady nod. She had chosen not to remain silent, and now she would represent a new horizon. From behind, Carla offered confirmation. This appointment has been approved by the executive board. Elena will enter the accelerated internal leadership program and receive full support. Other employees, those who had previously hidden backstage, now stepped forward. The fear was gone. A young male receptionist whispered, "I once saw Brandon cancel an elderly woman's check-in just because she didn't have a designer bag." A housekeeper added, "We were told that if a guest didn't look VIP, we had to alert management before allowing them to go upstairs." Elena nodded and looked at Selena. She understood it wasn't just about the three individuals. It was an entire distorted protocol that needed to be exposed. Selena signaled to Carla and Nia, "Begin internal reviews at all branches. Every overlooked complaint must be reopened. I want all supervisory dashboards updated in real time." Then she turned toward the guests. "Anyone who has ever felt humiliated here today or in the past will be contacted within 48 hours. By a real person, not a template letter. And if any of you would like to share your experience now, we have opened a feedback table in the side lobby." This reversal wasn't symbolic. It was unfolding in real time, visible in the eyes of everyone present. Horizon Grand was no longer a place for hollow apologies. It had become a space where ordinary people reclaimed their voice. Just minutes after Brandon, Alana, and Raheem quietly exited the hotel, an internal alert appeared on Selena's phone, a crisp message from Carla. "System warning, anomaly detected in complaint backup files from the Seattle branch, check immediately." Selena instantly swiped to open. Inside the encrypted file were numerous customer complaints previously marked resolved that in truth had never been addressed. Even worse, the approval signatures on most of those records did not belong to Brandon, but to Maxwell Trent, the former West Region Director who had taken an honorable retirement just 3 months ago. Selena's expression turned cold. Carla, still connected via the internal network, spoke sharply. "We found an email chain between Brandon and Maxwell from last year. In it, Maxwell instructs, 'Do not let low-potential guests occupy premium rooms, especially during conference season. Maintain Horizon's image. No official document, no signature stamp, just quiet lines executed like law.'" Elena stood frozen. She whispered, "I used to wonder why some of my reports never got a response." Now she understood what was called policy had really been a layer of paint covering a deeply rooted discriminatory system that stretched across multiple levels of leadership. Selena turned to Jacob, who was still live streaming, now with over 14,000 viewers watching. She looked directly into the camera and said, "What happened today is not about 3 individuals. This is a system that chose concealment, that eroded trust from within. That is why we will initiate a full audit across all 57 Horizon hotels." The air in the lobby seemed to pause for a beat. Someone murmured, "Unbelievable. So this wasn't the first time." Carla added, "We are also reviewing all employee terminations flagged as irregular over the past 5 years, especially from locations once under Maxwell's supervision." An elderly woman, who had stood quietly since the beginning, stepped toward Selena. She pulled from her coat pocket an old yellowed letter and said with trembling hands, "I used to be a front desk clerk at Horizon Santa Fe. I was let go for allowing a black gentleman to check in before the manager's approval. This letter is my dismissal notice. I kept it because I believed someone would need it someday." Selena accepted the letter with both hands, as if receiving a rare piece of evidence. Then she turned to Carla. "I want an internal investigation unit established, but not with our own people. Bring in an independent team with full authority and no bias." Carla confirmed immediately. "We already have a short list of 3 qualified firms. I'll send you the risk assessments by tonight." In one corner of the lobby, a foreign guest spoke up in a soft British accent. "I was once denied a room at Horizon Dubai, even though the app still showed vacancies. Now I understand why." A new alert appeared on the internal dashboard. All managerial roles previously under Maxwell's command were now placed under temporary oversight. It was a bold move, but a necessary one. Selena turned back to the guests. "This is no longer about just one hotel. This is about rebuilding trust, layer by layer, person by person." And in that grand, opulent hotel lobby, one lingering question now had its answer. Silence may help a system survive, but all it takes is one voice, with the courage to speak for it to begin unraveling. This was no longer a conversation between a CEO and 3 power-abusing employees. Selena Royce now stood at the center of a full-scale movement for reconstruction. She didn't shout or rally, but each of her words struck at the decaying foundation of Horizon Grand like the first swing of a pickaxe breaking through decades of frozen ground. Following the announcement of a full-system audit, Selena issued an urgent directive to Carla: temporarily suspend all automated check-in operations across all branches for 72 hours, prioritize manual intake by supervised staff, especially for guests associated with previous complaint files. Elena, now acting general manager of the Seattle branch, did not hesitate for a second. "I'll be at the front desk myself. No guest will be denied, delayed, or dismissed ever again." Within 30 minutes, Horizon's internal news feed lit up across HR departments from New York to San Diego. Horizon Grand Seattle Rapid Restructure underway. Alongside it was a screenshot capturing the moment 3 former employees were denied system access in front of dozens of guests. A short message attached below read, "We do not cover up, we make it right." Jacob was still filming, now with over 25,000 viewers watching live. Sophie handed him a water bottle, her phone steady, eyes locked on the frame. "This isn't just an expose anymore," she whispered. "This is history." Selena turned to the camera, for the first time intentionally looking straight into the livestream lens. "Horizon once declared in its mission that we welcome everyone. But today proves that slogans don't keep guests. Behavior can drive them away. That's why we're launching Horizon Forward, a system-wide equity initiative that retrains every frontline employee from the ground up. Not just how to serve, but how to see others not with their eyes, but with understanding." There was no thunderous applause, but heads nodded across the room. A young Asian boy holding his mother's hand stared wide-eyed, as if witnessing something he had never seen before. A woman who didn't argue, but still won. In a quiet corner of the lobby, Carla reported through her headset, "The media's getting involved. National outlets are requesting interviews. Other branches are now rechecking their own internal records." Selena closed her eyes for a second, then opened them, calm and firm. "We're not here to do press. We're here to do the truth." Then she stepped into the center of the grand lobby, where the plush chairs once reserved for VIP guests now served as seats for support staff sitting alongside patrons. "Eliminate all customer tier classifications from the old system," she said. "Replace it with one standard. Anyone who walks into Horizon deserves to be welcomed." Elena took the directive. Under her command, the Horizon Grand Seattle interface began transforming column by column. Platinum Gold Standard changed to one word: guest. A small word, but a monumental shift. A modestly dressed woman pulled a room confirmation from her coat pocket and approached the desk. Elena didn't need to check her name. She simply smiled. "Welcome to Horizon Grand. Your room is ready, and so are we." The reform had begun. But beyond the procedural changes, something subtle was happening. The guests didn't leave. They stayed. They talked. They remembered. No longer bystanders, they had become witnesses. And in that moment, Horizon Grand was no longer just a hotel. It was a declaration. Just when Selena thought the battle was over and the old system had been dismantled with a new operational map gradually taking shape, a notification from Carla shifted everything into deeper, more dangerous territory. On her phone screen was a preliminary summary from the legal audit team. Verified evidence confirms Gregory did not act alone. Below it was a chain of deleted emails, just recovered from deep archival storage. The sender, Michael Thorne, former regional director for Horizon's Western Division, who had retired with honors 3 months ago after vague allegations of workplace discrimination. Selena fell silent. Carla's voice came through the earpiece, sharp and steady. "We found that internal complaints were edited before being uploaded to the central system. Repeated phrasing, identical tone. The final approvals all came from Gregory, but the original reports came from staff across different branches." The truth was becoming clearer. Gregory was just the hand. The roots were those who had built an unspoken culture of selective hospitality. A quiet filtering model, unwritten but widely understood. If a guest did not dress the part, speak the right way, or carry the right look, they were labeled high risk. At that moment, Elena was assisting a guest when Selena approached. "We found fingerprints on the door," Selena said softly. Elena turned, not with fear, but with resolve. "Thorn?" she asked. Selena nodded. "And possibly more." Less than an hour later, an anonymous message was sent to Horizon's legal support inbox. It was short, a single line. "I used to work under Gregory in Portland. What's coming out is only the surface." The sender signed as Brian Lynn, a former manager who left the company 3 years earlier. Carla immediately called him back. In a 17-minute conversation, Brian confessed to having received orders from higher-ups not to accept profiles that don't fit the brand image, and that nothing needed to be written down, just understood. When asked why he was speaking up now, he replied, "I saw her standing there, not angry, not walking away. I realized I've stayed silent for too long." Selena said nothing during the call, but once it ended, she forwarded the recording to the legal team and turned to Jacob, still live streaming. "It's time the world knew. This didn't start at a hotel front desk. It started in a boardroom 7 years ago, and we will trace every thread to the end." Jacob turned to the crowd. "You are witnessing a full-scale investigation begin, not from the police or the press, but from the very founder of the company." The lobby of Horizon Grand fell silent like a cathedral. A middle-aged woman from the back of the room spoke up. "I was once denied service for bringing my child," a brown-skinned man added. "I was asked for double the deposit." Elena stood still. Voices once buried beneath policy now rose like a quiet storm, but one with an irreversible force. Selena stepped toward the check-in counter, eyes unwavering. "We will not fix just one hotel," she said. "We will remove every brick of this system until there is no place left where anyone must bow just to be accepted." The Cultural Revolution had found its defining moment, but now it had become a reckoning not for vengeance, but to purge a system that had rotted from within. And Horizon would be where it begins. 3 months after that historic night, Horizon Grand was no longer just a destination for business elites and high-end clientele. It had become the starting point of stories retold not through promotional slogans but through real people and real actions. Selena Royce, the woman who once walked into the lobby dressed simply and was treated like an outsider, was now remembered not through honorary plaques but in every systemic change. From check-in procedures to staff training methods, everything now reflected a simple philosophy she had always believed in. Dignity is not a privilege, it is a foundation. At Horizon's headquarters in Chicago, a newly inaugurated conference room was named the Royce Room, not to honor a CEO, but to remind everyone that silent courage can dismantle even the most arrogant strongholds. In that room, framed customer feedback from the past was displayed as historical testimony. Scribbled notes, long-forgotten emails, now standing as warnings never to be repeated. Elena, now officially the general manager of Horizon Grand Seattle, was no longer the front desk employee once threatened into silence. During the opening speech of the Open Doors program, she said, "I once stood before a choice, stay silent to keep my place, or speak up and risk losing it. Today, I'm here because someone taught me that sometimes losing a small job is the way to save a greater future." The hotel opened 3 free training rooms for anyone wishing to join the service industry regardless of background, gender, or origin. On each door was one line: "We were once wrong, but now we are ready to listen." As for Selena, she declined all television invitations and business award nominations. She did not need to stand on a stage. Instead, she spent her time visiting each branch undergoing reform. At every location, she carried one small item, a printed copy of the handwritten letter from the elderly woman who was fired for letting a black guest check in. That letter, now framed, was placed at every front desk with a caption that read, "Because she spoke up, you are truly welcome today." None of those who once rejected Selena still worked in the industry, but she never mentioned them. Her legacy was not about firing 3 people, but about making thousands more ask themselves one question: what will I do when no one is watching? That question echoed louder than any slogan ever could. One late spring afternoon, as Selena quietly exited Horizon Grand through the side door, a little boy ran up and shouted, "Are you the lady who made them open the doors again?" Selena smiled, knelt down to his eye level and said, "No, it's because of you. Because your generation deserves to grow up in a world where you don't have to knock 3 times just to be welcomed." She left without applause, but where she once stood remained a space clean, steady, and carrying a silent promise. Kindness does not need a uniform, only courage.